been training for podcasts for nigh on 12 years at this point to give you this prize quality product that we deliver every week. Mr. Travis Croft, how are you, sir?
I am fine and dandy. 12 years, you get less for manslaughter. And you'd think we'd be getting it right by now, wouldn't you, after 12 years? But here we are. We are still doing it the way we've always done it. And that's why all you Russian bots out there continue to tune in on a weekly basis and to find out about all things that are fit to print about Suburban Commando.
Look, what I value as a manager in retail over the ease of being able to just celebrate momentary excellence is consistent reliability. And that's what we are. We're consistently reliable, and you know exactly what level of product you're going to get every single week.
This is true. That is some weasel words there, like... the Nazis, they had their flaws, but you knew what you were going to get from them.
That's why they are consistently the best villain in all movies.
All films. Until recently, I remember when that Doom game came out about 5 or 6 years ago, Wolfenstein, the reboot of Wolfenstein, and they're like, all of a sudden it's fine to kill people because they've got different ideas. And Bethesda were like, but they're Nazis.
I remember Pete Hines from Bethesda came out and said, it's okay to kill them. They're fucking Nazis. I was like, yep.
Yeah, I don't remember that being
open shut case right there.
I don't remember there being a problem when the original Wolfenstein 3D came out. People were getting up in arms like, oh no, will somebody please think of the Nazis?
So I think that this is culturally inappropriate to have Hitler in a cyber suit. Sorry.
It was historically inaccurate.
It's just painting the Nazis with a brush they didn't deserve.
They deserve it, no. He wouldn't have worn a suit like that. It would have been a lot more stylish. Probably would have been designed by Hugo Boss or something. That's true, by the way. You can Google that. That is true. Hugo Boss designed the SS uniforms. Yeah. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're not here to talk about radical politics and get ourselves in trouble like that. Quite happy for that not to happen this week. What is on the show, though? We've got a big show this week.
We have got a big show. Yeah, we have got our chain movie of the week. Of course, #chain movie. We are following on from last week's 3-hour sketchbook of a Paul Thomas Anderson movie for all his future releases, Magnolia, going and following William H Macy to the equal 1999 movie, Mystery Men. Travis takes the wheel and chooses the next link in the chain. I made sure to put in some effort this week with viewings. So I've got a few things. There's the finale of Rings of Power. I did the Nigh on Impossible, and I finished season 1 of She-Hulk.
I think you deserve a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I know that many of you out there wondered whether it was doable, whether it was possible. And I, for a long time throughout, every minute, every second that went past, I wondered if I could do it too. But I kept on going, man. I just thought of king and country. That's a saying again.
You just lie back and think of England.
I also smashed in animated movie called The Bad Guys, based on a children's book series, and got around to watching Hocus Pocus 2 on Disney+. Meanwhile, we have got Travis going to talking about the godfather of the show, Kevin Smith's latest movie, the third in the Clerks trilogy, which, again, sounds like a weird thing to say, Clerks 3, as well as 2 years ago, Oscar Darling.
Yeah, so it'll be an interesting year because I pretty much watched them back to back.
Parasite, ladies and gentlemen, the movie that Donald Trump questioned for having best movie and not best foreign movie. Still think that's just stupid.
Well, it came out of Trump's mouth. I mean, seriously, they can go without saying it was fucking stupid.
Roses grow out of shit, sir.
Touche.
And of course, we have got the thing that ties the whole show together. The thing that is the reason why 5 out of 7 Russian bots approve of us. It is Return of the Trek respective.
The
ladies and gentlemen.
the
The final
finale
Trek
of the Trek
respective.
Perspective. It's the last one.
Yeah.
So there could be a replacement on the horizon. I'm not going to give anything away.
Ooh, teasers worthy of the MCU, ladies and gentlemen. Now, that is a big show, so shall we get straight into it?
Let's crack on. Mystery Men is the suggestion this week from 1999, starring Ben Stiller, Janine Garofalo, William H. Macy, Hank Azaria, Paul Rubens, Greg Kinnear, Jeffrey Rush, Eddie Izzard, Claire Filani, Praz Michael, Tom Waits, Ricky Jay. Another connection to last week's film. But our official connection was William H. Macy, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Directed by Kinka Usher, who went straight back to commercials and has never directed a feature ever again. What made you pick Mystery Men?
Why did I pick it? It was one of those movies that I had fond memories of growing up because it was alternative to what we were receiving in the late 90s for superhero movies. It had a lot of the trappings of it. You look at the costumes that they make for it and the quality and absurdity of the special effects going on into it, the fact that it's a star-studded cast. It seemed on the surface to be your typical late 90s superhero movie mold movie. But the fact that it's about a group of bad superheroes and not even B-class superheroes. These are D-class superheroes from a group in the comics that is run by the Flaming Carrot. How are you not going to be interested in that? And I wanted to go back, considering the years of overall good quality superhero movies that we've had. Go back to a time when it was a bit more of the Wild West in the superhero genre and see if it still stands up or if it's better or if it has gotten worse. Quick review. I think it's stayed the same. Have you watched this before?
I have watched this a couple of times before. I remember it coming out at the time. Yeah, and I think the most memorable thing about it at the time was, frankly, the Smash Mouth song. I mean, let's be honest, right? The Smash Mouth song was huge.
Yeah.
It was a smash hit all over the world. It's still a very, very popular song today, played on the radio a lot. And that was, I don't know what, I mean, it certainly was in the charts here. It was something you heard all the time on the radio. Back then, I used to live in a share house. We had the cable TV and had the music channel, which being, 20-ish, we all used to watch a lot of. And that film clip had stuff from a film, the stars of a movie were in the film clip and clips of a movie. And so that was pretty much all you saw about Mystery Men, because it didn't kind of sank beneath the waves awfully quickly without much of a gurgle. At the time, it was a real flop. If I recall, made about $30 million on a $60 million budget-ish.
Yeah.
When I think it found its home as with so many of these films on VHS initially, and then DVD.
Yeah.
And when you saw it, you're like, actually, I like this. This is funny. The cast, as you noticed, we noted earlier, is excellent. They are all, I think, excellently cast. I mean, Jeffrey Rush was a fantastic choice. We have a villain with one of the best villain names ever. I mean, Casanova Frankenstein. It's great. Greg Kinnear is a smarmy Captain Amazing. Is brilliant. Everyone's fantastic in this movie, and it's really tightly written and really funny. And the amusing thing is, this was the only superhero movie that came out apparently in 1999. I was watching the Joe Blow "What the Fuck Happened to This Movie" video, and they claim it's the only superhero movie from 1999. Don't come at me if I'm wrong. Go after Joe Blow. And it's kind of crazy, right? In hindsight, this is the only movie that came out that year. I think it's better than most of the superhero movies that were coming out at the same time. This is a year or two after Batman and Robin. It reused sets in those Batman films. And it used them better. This is actually a decent superhero movie. It looks pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, even today, the effects hold up pretty well.
Because they're intelligently produced CGI things. The world, the production value of the sets and the costumes and the way that it's filmed, they marry nicely with what CGI they were able to get. So no matter the age of the movie, because the CGI effect was designed to fit in with that world, the real world that they were filming in, it fits really nicely. Unlike so many things like She-Hulk, where the CGI is clearly done after the fact, and it's not considering how it looks in the real world. It's going to age badly, much like the prequel trilogy Star Wars movies, Jar Jar Binks, for example. It's well thought out in every level.
And it's a wacky world. It's kind of a crazy, stylized universe.
You open up with Granny
it's almost it's almost they've taken bits of the 60s Batman, you know, the gangs, like they all have a theme, like they all have a Red Eye gang where
a not so goody mob,
and you know the frat boys and the suits and
with the cameo of Michael Bay.
Can we bring the brewskis? Yes,
of course.
You can bring the brewskis. I love that. Jeffrey Rush is fantastic in this, by the way. He's absolutely chewing the scenery and he's doing it wonderfully well. But they have that sort of wacky, otherworldly sort of vibe that you get from those 60s Batman shows. But interesting, because that was what Joel Schumacher was trying to distill into his, or at least Batman and Robin, and to a degree, Batman Forever. He failed miserably.
Yeah.
But that kind of wacky work, that kind of wacky otherworldly quality and the crazy costumes and the crazy characters, the sort of bargain rate CGI was done well enough. Kind of fits. You don't need AAA CGI when I'm not being sold a AAA, you know, super serious superhero world. It's funny, it's silly. The bad guys, Eddie Izzard plays a disco themed, you know, heavy.
Disco is not dead. Disco is life.
And it's crazy, but it's funny and it works. So it really still looks pretty good.
I absolutely agree with you of like instilling some of that Adam West Batman kind of feel to it, but there's also a very healthy dose of like Terry Gilliam inspired set design and understanding of the absurd throughout the whole thing. So like the Herkimer Battle Jitney and the Junker and the buildings that are all there, the kind of pseudo Blade Runner-esque kind of cafe.
There was Blade Runner vibes in that. It's interesting that, like I said, they reuse sets, I think, from Batman Forever.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they've kind of twisted them around and made it look more like Blade Runner than it did Gotham City.
Yeah. And it was really kind of revitalizing for the movie, especially as you watch it and you kind of go, you know what, this city actually kind of makes sense. It feels organic and not planned, and it just makes the idea of a city having all of these just stupid levels of stupid superheroes like the Waffler and Pencilhead and things like that. It's like,
Ballerina Man.
I can imagine these things being there.
You know what it actually, from a more modern perspective, reminded me of? I think a TV show like The Boys owes a great debt to this show. You think of the idea of corporately sponsored superheroes and almost tiered levels of superheroes, which we pick up in The Boys. If you think about is it the Hawk in the most recent series, Blue Hawk, who I'm not going to tell what happens because someone may not have watched it, who is an antagonist of sorts in the most recent season. He's sort of a low-rent, low-level superhero from Cleveland or something, and, you know, isn't quite approaching the level of the Seven. Well, no means as gruesome or as cynical as The Boys is. But that sort of twist on the idea of how superheroes might operate in the real world was I guess the first time I'd seen it done. Yeah. And I know it's kind of a cliche now. And again, if anyone watches a Joe Blow video, mentions the same thing. This movie felt like it was made 20 years too early.
Yeah. Yeah.
If this film came out today, it would be so much more relevant in the sense of like we are overloaded with superhero films. So we're in line for a good superhero satire, but they are few and far between. There aren't. I mean, The Boys, is that satire? He's very dark for a satire, but maybe it's a black comedy in parts. But other than that, I can't think of a whole lot of great superhero satires of late.
I mean, there was the superhero movie by the Abrams group, not J.J. Abrams, but the the ones that did like Scary Movie and things like that. They branched off and did so many of them. Like they did Epic Movie and Disaster Movie and all that stuff. That was just trash. This is actually intelligently done, knowing the value of its source material and knowing the target of that source material and how to deliver that in a movie. But before we keep talking, let's do the unusual and tell them the synopsis.
Yeah, we probably should have done this 10 minutes ago. I'm sorry. A group of inept amateur superheroes must try to save a day when a supervillain threatens to destroy a major superhero in the city. So we meet the titular mystery man, who don't actually get that name until the end of the film. Mr. Furious, played by Ben Stiller, who only can get really, really angry, and then nothing happens. William H Macy, the shoveler, who goes around hitting people with a shovel. The Blue Raja, played by Hank Azaria, who dresses like an Indian, a parody of what an Indian person might look like, as per what the Brits in the 60s might have thought. And he flings forks at people. Later, they are joined by the Spleen, the flatulent Spleen, as the plot says here on IMDb, who basically has lethal farts. Played by Paul Rubens, played very well by Paul Rubens. And the bowler, played by Janine Garofalo, who has a haunted bowling ball as a weapon. And Invisible Boy, played by Kel Mitchell, who can turn invisible as long as no one's watching him, not even himself. Which is very funny. And I guess you could say an unofficial member is the philosophizing Sphinx, played by Wes Studi.
Yes.
You do not control your powers. Your powers will control you. And the Captain Amazing, who is the preeminent superhero in town, in Champion City, he's losing sponsors because all the good supervillains are now either dead or behind bars. And he concocts a plot to have one of his nemesis released from prison. Nemesis, played by Jeffrey Rush, Casanova Frankenstein, released from prison, so he can have he can battle him again and potentially up his stock and get more publicity, increase his sponsors, etc. Doesn't go to plan. He's captured, and the mystery men set out to rescue him, despite their ineptitude and lack of qualification to do so. Initially, this was going to be written and directed by Ben Stiller. He decided he didn't want to do that. Had to be talked back into coming on board. And he probably is our protagonist, main protagonist. But it was probably more of an ensemble piece. His relationship with Claire Filani, I feel like, was going to take up more time on the screen. I think that got cut.
Well, according to the notes, they were flirting with the idea of there being a bit of a love triangle with the bowler as well. And you kind of still have little inklings of that. Their arguments is like, I don't know, do I? I don't know, do you? Do I? Do you? And it's that kind of love-hate, kids in playground punching each other instead of saying, I like you, kind of thing.
Well, it's very amusing that the Paul Rubens Spleen's attempts to kind of crack onto the bowler only to get no, there's not enough alcohol in the world. Paul Rubens. A great scene in this film where Paul Rubens is standing in front of a flaming oil drum, which momentarily flames up behind him, and says, "Excuse me." But the thing is, the crazy thing is, when you read about it, is that was a mistake. Someone threw a lighter in there; it exploded.
Yeah,
he just in the moment improv that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be. I wonder how much of this got that improv treatment. They just sort of said, "Go into a room and try things." Actually, maybe not so much now that I think about it. The fact that Kinka Usher, the director, was a first timer straight out of commercials, and apparently had a really fucking bad time making this. Apparently, they all had a bad time making this.
Yeah.
At one point, Ben Stiller tried to withdraw from the film. He was having after an argument with Greg Kinnear about something. It's interesting. Sometimes those sort of films end up looking really awful. You can sort of see the bad blood on the screen through. This doesn't work. But
Other
this one's
times you have vibes.
And it just works. It's vibe. You're talking about the film vibes.
Yes.
I don't know. Did they have a bad time making that? I don't remember.
I don't know, but they didn't like each other.
But this one just works, and it's actually really hilarious. Like I only mentioned it last week. My favorite scene in the entire film is spoilers for a 23-year-old film. Is the scene where they finally locate Captain Amazing in Casanova Frankenstein's hideout, and they're trying to free him from this device they've got him. He's trapped in, and it's like, okay, flip the toggle. He's like, which one again? How many toggle flips are involved in this entire process? And it was just,
7.
It's just really, really like it's still laugh out loud funny today.
Yeah.
And I think this film's an absolute winner.
Yeah.
Like if you haven't seen it, check it out today. It's still, I think, the funniest superhero satire it has been made.
I think that Deadpool owes a lot to this movie as well. Just that kind of knowing absurdity, that self-referential element to it. Like with the first time they go to try and break into Frankenstein's thing, and the disco boys come out and they all pull guns and things like that, and the mystery men just start laughing at this, like, "Oh, is that your power? A pistol?" It's like, "What are you, the disco plumber?" They just get beaten down.
You mentioned earlier how smartly written it was, and this film's got some great writing, mate. I did enjoy it. My favorite scene is the toggle flip scene, but I noticed a couple of things with dialogue this time around. One, my favorite line in the film from the shoveler when he's driving they fit out a tank type thing to raid the Casanova Frankenstein's house, and he has one of the best lines I've ever heard in any film ever. "We've got a blind date with Destiny, and it looks like she's ordered the lobster." Which is a great line, and I had never noticed before. 2 references to William Shatner and Star Trek in this film. One point, Furious says to someone, "Don't correct me; it sickens me," which is a Shatner reference.
That's right. It is.
And the other one is a conversation between him and the bowler about. She says sabotage. No, I say sabotage. Well, I say sabotage, and that is a reference to the same Shatner conversation, which I had to explain to Michelle recently when we watched Star Trek for the first time. And why the Beastie Boys song was such a big deal in that song, but more on that later.
One of my favorite lines is where they go to Invisible Boy's house, and the Invisible Boy just shouts to his dad, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to my room with 3 strange men."
It's a funny movie. It's really beautifully written, and it doesn't have a major movie star. I guess Ben Stiller was the biggest star in it.
The year after There's Something About Mary.
He was probably the biggest star in it. But it's so many incredible performances and actors in this who are maybe not household names, but they probably should be.
Yeah, and they're definitely faces that you kind of recognize. I mean, Hank Azaria has got a little controversy around him because of the developments of the Apu character from The Simpsons, which he voiced for a long time. But he's also kind of a name that people seem to know. William H. Macy has appeared in so many things. Ben Stiller obviously is still a standout, but Jeffrey Rush, I think, is the one whose legacy is kind of still fantastic, because the level of scenery chewing that he does in this is probably the thing that got him Captain Barbossa in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, because he's just delightful as a bad guy. He's so engaging.
But that said, though, probably of all the actors in this film, he's the one whose legacy has been the most tarnished by
he successfully won the case.
He won the case, but so for those who don't know, he was accused of inappropriate behavior towards a co-star in a production of King Lear in Australia. I think he nuded up in front of her or something. Don't quote me. You can find the stories out there, but he sued them for defamation and won. Now, I am not funnily enough, I'm not a lawyer, but when you hear some of his shit that was tested, the judge said, yeah, he probably did it, but it's defamation anyway. I'm like, what? So I don't want to get sued by Jeffrey Rush, and he does live here in Melbourne, so he could find me. And
I will find you.
So let's just say it was controversial. And, you don't see a whole lot of him anymore.
Yeah, he's definitely stepped away from the public eye. But every time he's on screen, it's just electric. And I don't even mean that as a pun. It's like, I killed my own men.
This was a real treat. This is a real treat this week, and I enjoyed going back and watching it again. And you wish it about 20 years of context to see what superhero films have gone on to become. I wonder if this might have been a bigger hit if it was released now.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's such a shame, but I also think that there is definite scope, especially how deep cuts the MCU is going with their own catalog of stuff, and every streaming service wanting to have their superhero or superpowered brand on board. Someone's going to pick up the Mystery Man at some point.
There's been whispers of a sequel. Apparently Ben Stiller was being asked about it not so long ago, and he said he'd be up for it. So he's still a big name. So if you could get Ben Stiller back, most of those guys are still alive, I think. So you could put together the dandy. I'm not saying you should make a sequel, but you could. And would it be any good? Who knows? But it could happen. But you're right. It's a name. It's got a cult following over the last 23 years. And its cast would still be reasonably recognizable. You'd probably go out and hire somebody else to be. Maybe you would put the flaming carrot in it this time.
Well, yeah, that, especially considering how on and off people keep on trying to do Ghost Rider and getting him, and the fact that the flaming carrot is a straight up parody rip of Ghost Rider for the absurdity alone. It's like, yeah, you could definitely do something fun with that. And if someone was able to do that before Ghost Rider actually comes into the MCU, that would be a nice little poke in the eye of Disney for sure.
Have they cast him yet?
I don't know.
But those who are uninitiated, I recommend the Nicolas Cage ones. They are kind of crap. But especially the second one's pretty awful. But they're still good quality Nicolas Cage material, if you know what I mean, right?
The first one, at the very least, is cromulent.
Cromulent's the right word. And it was shot here in Melbourne, so there's that.
Technically, even though they do still seem to keep trying to delete it, the Shield show that did have Robbie Reyes as Ghost Rider. So that's the most recent one that I can find so far. Yeah.
Well, you're right. Who knows? Anyway, so have you got anything more you'd like to say about Mystery Men?
No. I think half an hour of spouting on about how delightful this movie is. I think that's more than enough. Where are you taking us this time? Because I think you've got one or two good escape routes.
I've got a multitude of escape hatches. One could follow Tom Waits, who's been on the soundtrack for 200 different films. But we're not following Tom Waits.
We didn't even talk about Tom Waits in this movie.
Who was reading his lines off his fingers, so that's why he talks to his...
It refocuses the tributary.
He's good in this, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But we're not. We are not. We are not following Tom Waits. We are trying to follow Claire Forlani.
Oh, okay.
And we have, I found I came down to two options here for Claire Forlani for me.
The
first option was Police Academy, Mission to Moscow, Police Academy film. But no, we are not watching Police Academy Mission to Moscow. Instead, we're going to revisit something again I have seen before, but not for a very long time. And it's on brand for today's show. We're going to go back and we're going to watch Mallrats in 1995, in which he played Brad. I don't think I've seen Mallrats in 20 years. So, and makes continuing that trend we've had over the last few weeks of revisiting stuff and seeing how they hold up. Mallrats, I remember thinking initially, being the Kevin Smith fans, I was being a significantly weaker film than Clerks.
Agree.
And not liking it very much at the time. But I've subsequently found out it's very, very fondly remembered by other Kevin Smith fans. As a 7 on IMDb, it has now got a sequel on its way. Apparently.
That's right, yeah.
Mallrats, what's it called? She's going to be in that too, by the way. Twilight of Mallrats. And Claire Filani and most of the gang are coming back for that one. So, given we're going to talk Kevin Smith this week, and given the sequel, I thought let's take another look at Mallrats before we make up our mind about what we think of a sequel, when and if ever it gets released in this country. And of course, it exists in the MCU as well.
Actually, yes, because of Stan the Man Lee.
And he was reading the script in Captain Marvel. So if you want to watch along, you can find it on Apple, Google, Microsoft, YouTube, Fetch, Amazon, all the places in Australia. Probably lots of other places if you're overseas. So, yeah.
All right. Now, do you mind if I just...
I reckon why don't you just punch it out, a little bit of your streaming stuff that you finished up this week. So you got a finale of She-Hulk and a finale of Rings of Power.
Yeah. So I'll talk about She-Hulk first, because why not? It's more fun to destroy than it is to create sometimes. This show, my goodness, it's had a lot of tumultuous reviews, shall we say, online, and most of it has been angled at where's the story going, why does She-Hulk look so bad, and what's the point of this. And you know how when a couple of weeks ago I talked about the Matrix Resurrections,
yes,
and I said they did the cardinal sin of literally showing us sequences from the first movie and trying to replicate them in the movie and not hitting that height. So you were just constantly going, I could just stop this movie and watch the original instead. That self-referential attitude is rife in She-Hulk. And none more so. Like, the fact that she breaks the fourth wall, fine, do it. If she does it in the comics, you can do it here. I'm not having a go at that at all. But every single time she has broken the fourth wall and talked directly to the audience, you can't help but go, well, yeah. So if you're already aware of this, why are you doing it? If you're agreeing that this isn't a good idea, why are you fucking doing it in the first place? And that goes through the first few episodes, and then we get to a couple of, it's hard to call them filler episodes when pretty much all of them are filler episodes, but there's like sequences where she says, oh yes, remember whose show this is? And it's like, oh yep, this isn't one of those cameo of the week shows. It absolutely is. And it's just awful to the point where when you finally get to, I think it's, hang on, let me have a quick look here. So Mean Green, Just Jen. Yeah, so it actually, after episode 5, you have episode 6, Just Jen, where she is just invited to a wedding and it's just Jen, not She-Hulk. And then there's an episode called The Retreat and Rip It and Rip It, or Ribbit and Rip It, sorry. Those are episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8. They actually start building something of a cohesive story and are actually kind of enjoyable. And episode 8, Ribbit and Rip It, is where they officially bring Daredevil into the MCU. And it's Charlie Cox coming back, revisiting. Great. lovely. They have their nice little will they won't they romance thing, and she's a sex pest, so of course they have sex. And then the finale happens. The finale episode, and I am going to put up the spoilers warning on this one just for anyone who cares. Travis, do you mind if I talk spoilers?
I'm not going back for more of this.
Because this is the episode, Whose Show Is This? Walters is released from DODC custody, but is forced to wear an inhibitor to prevent her from transforming, and loses her job at JLK&H. Nikki and Pug infiltrate an intelligentsia event. Intelligentsia is essentially 4chan, where they learn that Phelps, one of the guys that She-Hulk went on a date with, is Hulk King, and Blonsky, as the Abomination, is serving as a motivational speaker. Walters arrives at the event, confronts Phelps, and it just keeps going there. Phelps injects himself with her blood to transform into a Hulk. Titania, who's this really annoying nemesis of She-Hulk, turns up, and what's his face? Mark Ruffalo's Hulk comes in. So you've got Abomination, you've got Hulk, you've got Titania, you've got everyone just kind of in there, and it's just all over the place. She breaks the fourth wall and just says, "What the hell is going on?" It's like, yep, totally agree with you. What the fuck is this shit? And she then is talking so much that it takes you back to the Disney Plus menu, and she breaks out of the She-Hulk sign, and she finds the Marvel Assemble thing, which is kind of the behind the scenes documentary, and then she goes into that, and you follow her through the back lot of the Marvel studios. She goes into the production studio of She-Hulk and interrupts them, saying, "What the hell's going on here? I want to talk to Kevin, blah 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 blah." And then she goes, and Kevin is not Kevin Feige. Kevin is a robot, and she has this big talk about, why are we doing this? And Kevin actually says, and people know what people have certain expectations that we need to fulfill. And she rightly says, why can't we just do our own thing? And it's like, yes, you are absolutely speaking the truth here, sister. Praise, please stop this. Edit the show and give us an interesting ending. And they don't. They just go, nah, we've got to the end of 22 minutes. Let's wrap this up. And it's fucking awful. It is so fucking bad. The CGI looks trash. Every single character that they have brought into it from the various parts of the MCU is not treated with respect in any way. Like Abomination versus Hulk in the Incredible Hulk movie, which is canon because of this fucking show. Abomination is suddenly like twice the size of Hulk, and it's like, okay, when did that happen? How are we really supposed to believe that Hulk would be able to take out Abomination with this? And Hulk, so what? Okay, fine, whatever. And just the absurdity of the whole thing, it's just bad. It is so bad. I legitimately don't know if Uwe Boll could have made this worse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a big criticism.
Yeah, because it is badly directed. Tatiana Maslany is charming when she's breaking the fourth wall, because she is speaking honestly and openly, and it is actually well written what she is saying. But they don't have the wherewithal to go, you know what? Yeah, let's actually listen to our fucking selves and do something interesting with this story, rather than it serve to introduce Hulk's fucking child. It's fucking bad, people. It's so bad. I genuinely don't know how anyone at Marvel just went, yeah, this is going to make people happy. Because it's not. It's bad CGI. It is bad representation of every gender, because apart from one guy, all of them are sleazebags and shitty. And apart from Jen, all the women seem to just be either laser focused on career or hyper aware of fashion. It's like, there are so many other branches of this thing called life. And if you actually embrace those, you can suddenly have some interesting stories and some interesting characters that I would actually be interested in remembering their fucking name for. I don't care about any of them. It's awful. It does not get better. It does not get like I'm looking at the MCU TV shows, okay, and none of them have stuck the landing. None of them have been able to hold together a good story. And I have said this before about Daredevil, the fact that season 1 was great on Netflix. The rest of them, patchy, at best, patchy. They've got 22 episodes for the new one, and they were just about able to do one season of 8 or 10 episodes. I don't fucking trust them with Daredevil for 22 episodes. Sorry, they're not going to be able to do it. Don't care how good Charlie Cox is as the character. They have absolutely just lit matches and burnt fires on all of the stuff that they've put on the TV because it's just bad. Either too long, too short, focus is all wrong, or just it's a clusterfuck. And I don't know what to say more because it's awful.
So that's a no.
Yes, it's definitely a no. This is the worst MCU product, bar none. Bar none. It is awful. It does everything wrong.
So hopefully you're going to tell me something different about Rings of Power. So we've said a big no on She-Hulk. What do you make of Rings of Power after now having seen the full season?
Full first season. It's a joy. It's a joy. It is absolutely a Tolkien product, and by that it's slow, meandering, and flowery. But they make you very aware from the opening credits, even the posters, that this is a Tolkien product. So set your expectations accordingly, and you're going to actually have a really good time because all the characters are well acted. The story is slow and just building, and it gets 1.5 thumbs up for the fact that it was pretty much able to hide the twists from me.
And that's a statement considering your superpower of ruining things for yourself.
Yes. So it was really nice to actually have that kind of like, oh, okay, they are going that. Oh, they're not going. Oh, wait. Oh, I like that. That's good. That gives depth to characters. It gives impetus and drive for the next season. Every element of it is designed to kind of just elevate. Each time it's cranking it up a little bit each time, and it's just beautifully done. The quality of the CGI throughout the whole thing is sublime. It is very obviously, when you look at it, oh yeah, that's the most expensive TV show ever made right now. Okay. You can see it. And the fact that they took a long time to actually cultivate the story. Absolutely. It's amazing what happens when you take care and consideration with your product.
That's
You're more likely to have a success.
Crazy talk.
I know.
Well, I mean, I just stepping back for She-Hulk for one moment. All I've heard is people going, "Oh, I love how they troll with toxic fanboys in the last episode." I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of toxic fanboys out there. Don't get me wrong, and I do try very hard to say that we're not amongst them because we give things a chance. But if you're going in with that mindset, you know what I'm going to do with this final episode? I'm going to troll the toxic fanboys. That's what I'm going to do with my episode. That's what my series is about. I'm going to troll the people who are going to hate this show. No. is that the right mindset to go in with something like this? And like I think we feared that potentially there's going to be a bit of that in Rings of Power, because that's been equally controversial. A lot of people have had a lot of bad things to say about it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like they haven't decided to troll the toxic fanboys here.
No, they haven't. And if you're going to go, you know what? Yeah, we are going to spend the last episode of our series trolling people. Okay, sure. If that's what you want to do, fine. But why? How does that serve your product? How? It doesn't. And with Rings of Power, they say, no, people are going to expect this. So let's just do what we want to do with the story. We know where we want to go. We know where we want to end up. So let's just stick to that path. And they did a good job. It's not the best fucking show in the world. It is not. I'm not saying that whatsoever, but it is solid. It is. I joked about it at the start with our show of reliable, but it is. And the action in it, the set pieces in Rings of Power are sort of like, that was good. Actually, that was very good. Like it knows what it wants to do and it does it. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all.
It's funny, the Tolkien fanboys are different to Marvel fanboys. Well, maybe they are. Well, I don't hear a lot of Marvel people complaining about She-Hulk not being accurate to the comics, for example, because I think she broke the fourth wall a lot in the comics and was kind of used as a sexy character a few times. So
yeah,
maybe they were kind of accurate enough to the comics to get away with that. But the Tolkien fanboys, my God, they seem very set. No. Tolkien didn't say it was going to be like this, and you can't veer off course of what they seem to think Tolkien was saying. It's their fictional characters, we can do different stuff with fictional characters. That's kind of half the fun of fictional characters, like tomorrow night I'm going to go see Hamilton. It's a shock horror. Hamilton wasn't Latino, despite the fact that he was played by a Latino for the entire run of the American version. What's the guy who wrote its name? I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yes, he's Puerto Rican, I think. Alexander Hamilton wasn't Puerto Rican, and he's a real person. So, if we can have a Puerto Rican, playing a white man who was actually a real person, maybe we can do something a little bit different with some fictional characters who were vaguely described by someone who, 100 years ago in their book. I remember when the films came out, I've told you this before. I remember I lived with a guy who was a massive Tolkien fan who was shocked. Well, they left the Silmarillion out. It didn't cover the Silmarillion stuff in the film, so they're not very good. And you'd be like, oh, fuck, man, I don't even know what the Silmarillion is because I'm not a Tolkien fan. But, it's that kind of nitpicky shit that seems to cause all this drama with people.
That's the big difference. So Lord of the Rings, when Peter Jackson did the trilogy, he did overall, I think he did a great job of keeping out the things that weren't vital to get from A to B. With the director's cut ones, he was able to add a lot more of that in, and it did enrich the story. And then when they went back and they did The Hobbit, they added shit in there that was to serve fans and to tick social justice boxes. Like, oh yes, we're going to have Tauriel in there, and we're going to have Legolas, and they didn't need to do that to serve the story. They didn't need 3 fucking movies to tell the story of The Hobbit, but they did. So that was the wrong way of doing it. Now this, they have kind of managed to get a nice happy medium of, yes, we are going to reference things that you are aware of. We are going to generally stick to the timeline that Tolkien set out for the 5,000 years or whatever the length of this time span is supposed to be on essentially the birth of Middle Earth and all the Rings of Power and getting to The Hobbit, essentially. That's a lot of fucking story that you have to tell, and you're not going to be able to tell it all. So you constrict some of it, you leave some of it out, you merge some characters together so that there's not 5,000 storylines, there's 1,200. And if you do it well, if you do it right, the story and the characters can be preserved. And I think overall they are doing that well with this. They're not inserting things in there just to make it socially appropriate. Some people will come back at me and say, oh yeah, but there's no black dwarves in any of the Hobbit stuff or the Lord of the Rings. That's not an argument. Fuck off. It's a fictional character. They can be any fucking color. It's absolutely fine.
Just enjoy the show. Like, you're getting new content, right? Like,
exactly.
Enjoy it.
Yeah. So it's a tale of two finales for me, with She-Hulk seemingly purposefully going to antagonize, whereas the Rings of Power is just, we are going to finish our series. We're going to finish series 1 with this. That's where we aimed to from the beginning. We are not intentionally trying to piss anyone off. We are trying to tell a story, and we have. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Well, that's a plus. I'm not sure I'm going to get back to it. But, it's good to know that they got it right. Like, the first 2 episodes I watched, I thought, seemed pretty good to me. And as somebody who, it also seemed pretty faithful to me, apart from some of the casting, which I don't really care about the casting, like what color of the skin of the people who are cast, really, more than anything else. My fandom mainly is Trek, right? I love Star Trek. Yeah. And, I get a lot of new content. There are 5 Star Trek shows on television at the moment. And
how many good ones?
Most of them are awful. And that's not because of casting. It's because they're badly written. But, I would love the only one that seems remotely faithful to the source material or to the originals, not all for fans, is Brave New Worlds. And it was a joy. It was a great joy to me to be watching something that felt like it saw, hey, you know how you used to really like Star Trek? We've made something for you. As opposed to all the other series, which are, fuck you, this is Star Trek now.
You think you know Star Trek? You know nothing, sir.
Well, pretty much. Like, well, fuck you. You like what it used to be? Fuck you. This is what we're making now. This is not for you anymore. And, I'm open to opening up doors to new audiences, but I would love something to me that was made with a reverence and care that looked like Rings of Power was paid for Tolkien fans,
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of Star Trek, I think it might be time.
It's time for the big one, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, so we did record this the other night. Excuse the camera. I didn't reinstall Zoom, so it started doing that annoying thing that focused only on the speaker and not both of us. So it's not quite as slick as some of our earlier productions, but I'm sure we will.
You're saying our quality level is going to drop, sir? I don't think you can take it.
It's such a thing but possible. Greetings and salutations, Star Trek fans, and welcome back to the final installment of the Trek Perspective here on the podcast. And joining me, as always, is the delightful Michelle. Nanu, how are you today?
Oh, I'm well, thank you.
You must be glad this is all over.
Feeling a lot of feelings at the moment. Just, I promised myself I wouldn't cry when it finished, that I've gotten to the end. I've done it, a sense of relief. It's over. I never have to interact with anything Trek related ever again in my entire life.
I don't know that that's entirely true. Could you pull your hair back? There we go. I think she's going to interact with something Trek related in the future. And even if that's only me. And let's not pretend there weren't tears along the way. There were tears, there were laughter, there was sighs of relief, there were sneers of disgust, particularly, and that was just Star Trek 1. But here we are to talk about the Abrams films, so start the last 3 films in one lump sum. These are commonly in the world of Trek known as the Kelvinverse films. Let's start with the 2009 reboot, directed by J.J. Abrams himself, a great man, Star Trek. This is the introduction of the new crew, Christopher Pine and Zachary Quinto as Spock and Kirk, and so on and so forth. What did you make of J.J. Abrams' first outing in the Star Trek universe?
Oh, this is going to hurt me saying this. It really is going to hurt me, and I'm just going to have to say it through gritted teeth for many reasons. One, because Star Trek, and 2, J.J. Abrams. But I actually found the tone of the 3 films and the look of it quite good.
So in this one, the brash James T. Kirk tries to live up to his father's legacy, with Mr. Spock keeping him in check as a vengeful Romulan from the future creates black holes to destroy a Federation one planet at a time. Our villain here is Eric Banner.
The best of the 3 villains, I might add there.
And we have the introduction of Chris Hemsworth for about 5 minutes as James Kirk's dad.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just standard blonde male model stand-in would have been just as fine, because the amount of acting there was just, well, I mean, it was Chris Hemsworth, you know, but yeah, no, standard, I don't know whether that's so prominent. Look, I like the set. I like the fact that we got to re-meet these characters with a little bit of new actors making it theirs, and also finding new ways to interpret them. I enjoyed that slightly. I thought all of them do a really good job of the characters, except for, is it Simon Pegg makes me laugh. I'm like, is that a real Scottish? That's a pretend Scottish. You can see it from a mile away. That Scottish accent is just, you know, fake. But the rest of them do a really good job of trying to imbue themselves into the roles. I think the actor that does Bones and the actor that does Spock do a better job than Christopher Pine. I think Christopher Pine modernizes Kirk a little bit too much, to the point where you're like, there's no, other than the arrogance, I'm not quite sure how this links it back to William Shatner. And William Shatner was way more smoother.
Well, there's only one Bill Shatner, so you know, we can't hope to have him live up to that.
Maybe we mean Kirk at a time when, you know, life has had its way with him and smoothed out all the edges, and so we're getting the real edgy version of Kirk. But yeah, I actually don't like how he plays Kirk. I actually prefer William Shatner.
Well, yeah, we also get some old school Spock in this film, which I think you actually might have secretly enjoyed.
It gave it a lot of heart. Yes, which gave me the shits, because I'm like, why am I caring that this has heart? A reference to another, but I thought it gave it a lot of heart. And I got to say, my criticisms of previous Star Trek movies were that they didn't follow character arc properly. I think J.J. Abrams does a very good job of actually creating a storyline, a proper arc, and one where I'm not laughing because what they're doing is completely nonsensical. This actually put it in a universe where I had a reference point of why this was serious, what isn't. Some of those introductions where they're in a far-off world, like I think in the second film they were in that red world.
We'll get onto that one in a second. So, what did you make of this then? So, how many lockdowns?
I'd probably give it 3 out of 10 lockdowns.
I thought 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
High praise indeed. Now, you were just hinting. So, the next one we're going to look at is Starting to Darkness, which is the follow-up. Also directed by J.J. Abrams. Same crew, same cast largely, except the bad guy this time is RoboCop himself, Peter Weller, which I kind of enjoy seeing Peter Weller kick around. The only real other addition to the crew of a cast series, of course, the real bad guy, Benedict Cumberbatch is Khan. And I enjoyed seeing Alice Eve. I think everyone who's heterosexual men enjoyed seeing Alice Eve pop up as Carol Marcus in this film, in a scene that's become somewhat controversial of late. But you say you're talking. This one opens up in a faraway world in a red planet with them stealing some stuff from.
Yeah, so that seemed to be a lot nonsensical, which is I found the same thing with the start of the third one. I know what they stole or what was no, he was presenting a gift which was not accepted by that particular.
That's the last one.
Yeah, but again, those they're not good at. You know what? I've never liked about Star Trek, and this is probably the thing I don't like about Star Wars as well. Just all the different types of monsters and whatever, all the different types of whatever they're called, aliens. And
well, usually aliens, yes.
Yes, I can't really. I just want to laugh. I just, and I thought the rest of the film was so serious, and so they're trying to do these light-hearted moments, and I'm like, it doesn't quite. They're not like I think that's what Marvel does really, really well. Hit those serious notes with the banter notes and the humor. That's what's made those films so successful. I don't think J.J. Abrams pulls this off in Star Trek, in either of the three films. The guy who plays Bones has great comedic timing. Simon Pegg is playing to the cheap seats. Christopher Fiennes a little bit too serious. I actually really like Uhura, but maybe because it's Zoe Saldana and I've got a soft spot for it.
Just speaking of our connections between our two connections between the Marvel universe and the Trek universe here being Benedict Cumberbatch and Zoe Saldana, who are both Avengers, of course.
Yes, so I think I actually really liked her interpretation. They both of the actors who play that role have a lot of dignity to the role, and also a lot of I'm surrounded by men, sense about them, which they both communicate quite well. And I thought, who am I missing? What's his name?
Sulu?
Played by Cho. Yes, Zulu, played by, is it Michael Cho?
John Cho.
Who I also have a soft spot for because he's a brilliant actor. I thought he did really well with his role as well. So, and then there was a Russian guy who played the Russian guy.
Anton Yelchin, the late Anton Yelchin.
Yeah, they didn't make them more of that role. Anyway, so in this particular one, we've got Cumberbatch, and as much as I have a lot of time for Cumberbatch because I am a fan of Sherlock Holmes and Doctor Strange, he seemed a little bit out of place in this film. Are you in the right film as a villain? I think you're meant to be in another film. So he seemed out of character a little bit, even though he's playing Khan.
Is that because he doesn't normally play villains?
No, I think he'd make a great villain, to be honest. I just think that he just didn't fit in. Maybe I associate him with Marvel so much that I just didn't associate him with a Star Trek franchise, but he just seemed a little out of place. I'm trying to find if it's more than, whether it was more than that or not. No.
Because there have been criticisms by some people I know that he's too white to play a character named Khan, because Khan is kind of played traditionally in the previous films by Ricardo Montalban. And he obviously... Sorry?
When there's not a lot of representation going on and you have a character that you've identified growing up going, this is my type of character because I see myself in him, and now they've taken that away from me, I can understand that criticism. I can also understand from the other perspective, a character is a character and an actor is,
Well, he was Ricardo Montalban, of course, was, I believe, of Mexican extraction. And, olive skin, dark skin, olive skin. He's a darker skinned person, and I guess Mexican. Khan is also not a traditional Mexican name, as far as I'm aware. So, but some people did say that it was maybe a little bit of whitewashing there, casting a white man as a character named Khan. What did you make of the? I
thought the original Khan did a much better.
Well, Ricardo Montalban with a shirt. It was the shirt, wasn't it? It was the.
It was the shirt.
The shirt.
it was the 70s vibe, showing my lack of chest hair, my manly chest. I very much,
And
responded
chewing
to
the
that.
scenery, but you can't compare it to the original. But what did you make of the ending of this one? So for those who haven't, it's a 10-year-old film, so I think we could spoil it. The role reversal of Kirk and Spock's, it's Kirk's death at the end as opposed to Spock's death in the original.
It was much more moving in the original. I just thought that, I get you want to zag when everyone's expecting you to zig and all the rest of it, but, yeah.
Did it feel contrived?
No. It felt contrived. It felt a little bit like Member Berries. It felt, yeah, I thought the second film did absolutely, I thought the first film did a better job than the second film. Even though I thoroughly enjoyed Cumberbatch.
How many lockdowns for Star Trek Into Darkness?
Probably 4.5, maybe a 4.
A 4, so maybe a 5.5, 6 out of 10 for this.
Yeah.
So let's keep going then. We're going to be last Star Trek film of the saga.
Oh my God, is it really happening?
For now, anyway. For now.
Oh my God.
Paramount.
So I don't believe it.
The studio don't seem to have any fucking idea about how to get this back on the big screen right now. So I think
I don't care if the studio is bringing it back. I have fulfilled the.
Oh no, you won't be forced to watch it, but for the rest of us out there who enjoy these films.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well,
Star Trek Beyond, the crew of the USS Enterprise explores the first reaches of uncharted space. They encounter a new ruthless enemy who puts them and everything the Federation stands for to the test. This was not written or directed by J.J. Abrams. It was a bad robot version. This was written by Simon Pegg and Doug Young, and directed by Justin Lin this time, who before this was probably best known for his involvement in the Fast and Furious movies. And the bad guy this time is played by Idris Elba, unfortunately covered by a great deal of makeup for most of the film. What did you make of Star Trek Beyond?
It was my favorite one out of all the 13.
What did you enjoy about it?
A lot. Well, let's start with the fact that at no point did I make you pause it to see how long to go. I just thought the action was on point, the character arcs were on point. The only thing that failed this movie was a really crappy villain. So when we get to the point where the villain actually states its case for doing what he was doing, it just kind of went, what? Just stay home. Why are you bothering everybody?
He was confusing.
Yeah, so I thought Idris Elba, of course, is a great actor and very nice to look at on screen. Yeah, his character was a bit confusing. I thought the interaction between the characters, the relationship between Uhura and Spock, I absolutely loved. I also liked that relationship between just Bones there with Spock there for a moment as well. Simon Pegg and the woman warrior that he found. Jayla. I really liked Jayla. She was cool. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this movie, like to the point that I forgot that I was being made to watch this.
I would take issue with the word made, and just sort of remind you that this was a freely entered into arrangement.
Of course.
So this one being written by Simon Pegg, we saw a lot more of Simon Pegg in this one than the previous two. Did that help you change your opinion of his performance as Scotty?
I think Simon Pegg's a good writer. I don't know if he's a good actor, but he's definitely a good writer. I think he pulled all these things. I think he got closer to doing the humor, banter parts better, and then the seriousness better than J.J. Abrams. In fact, there was that line where Bones goes, "Damn it, I'm a
doctor."
And I think I just laughed out loud. So I just thought the characterization was good, story arc was good, it was pacey in a good way. There wasn't stuff in, except for the villain's main speech where I went, huh? there wasn't stuff in there that took me out of it that I'm like, wait, this is absolutely stupid and deranged. I just thought it was a really good job. Well done. And I would give it 1 out of 10 lockdowns.
Ooh, a 9 out of 10. That's very high praise. High praise indeed. I particularly enjoyed the scene where they used the power of hip hop to defeat the enemy. Yeah.
Sabotage.
Sabotage.
That was brilliant. That was nicely. That's a beautifully threaded. It just went through concept, history, characterization. It just put everything together to create that moment, which was just beautifully done.
You weren't familiar with that song beforehand, and I had to give you a bit of a heads up on the Star Trek in joke that was, of course.
And I thoroughly enjoyed it once I knew that. But even without knowing that, I enjoyed that moment, how beautifully choreographed it was.
It did look good on the screen. It's I'll pay it that I didn't like this very much when it came out in 2016. I thought it was certainly the most average of the three, particularly stuff like Kirk jumping a motorcycle over a cliff kind of thing. It was like really, it reeked of well, I guess it reeked of Fast and Furious. It's something you'd see in a Fast and Furious movie, not in a Star Trek movie. I don't want Kirk riding motorcycles in Star Trek movies doing stunt jumps. Like, it was stupid. And it didn't make any sense in the sense he was driving a 500-year-old internal combustion motorcycle, and it just works. But, but that said, maybe I was watching it again several years later. It was a lot more entertaining this time around than when I saw it back in 2016 for the first time. I still think it was a poor choice of director, and I don't think Justin Lin understands Trek. He made a Fast and Furious film with the Trek characters and spaceships, which, is fine. But the fact there hasn't been another one since, and they're still struggling to figure out what.
Maybe there's 13 films and we've all had enough. Maybe could also be that.
Yeah, I don't know. If there's money, I don't think they're going to stop making them. There are five different Star Trek television shows on the air at the moment. I think 4 or 5 Star Trek shows.
I've watched none of them and will watch
Discovery, Brave New World, Below Decks, Picard, and Star Trek Genesis, I think is the other one. Or
they have Star Trek, cooking show at this point. I mean,
I wouldn't put it past them. It's Star Trek, something like Nemesis, Genesis, something like that. Anyway, and that's 5 different Star Trek shows on the air at the moment. So I don't think anybody is actually at Paramount agrees that people have had enough, because they're giving us more than ever. Except everything they're giving us now, except for maybe Brave New World, sucks. So anyway, that is the end of our journey. That is the end of the Trek Perspective, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else in between and undecided. Thank you, Michelle, for being my guinea pig and experimental co-host here.
You're very welcome. It's been educational.
Thank you for being a good sport. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with our delightful audience. There could be a new Trek Perspective coming, or a new version of this for somebody else, a new victim. But all will be revealed in good time. So in the meantime, thank you very much, Michelle.
Thank you, Travis.
May the force be with you, and back to you, Spearsy.
Tear. Cinematic masterpiece, finished perfectly. And my goodness, she is free.
Free at last.
Movies. Wow. What an epic. What a series. And the Star Trek Beyond getting the highest grade.
We all happen, right? Every one of those films, like, whatever the least popular thing was of a particular, the least popular next gen film was Nemesis. That's the one she liked. I guess it wasn't true of TOS, because she rightly thought Star Trek 5 was ass. But but the stuff that was less Trekky, was this Trekkie was more in her wheelhouse because she's not a Trekkie.
Yeah,
anyway, it's over now. She never has to watch another one of these in her life. She whatever happens next in the Trek universe, she won't see it. That was the Star Trek 4 that was going to happen was going to be written by the guys who did Rings of Power.
That's right. Yeah,
and they came out this week with a bit of a conversation about what it was going to be about. It was going to be Chris Hemsworth stuck in a transporter loop, a little bit like there's a Next Gen episode where Scotty is stuck in like a transporter loop, and they bring him back for an episode of Star Trek Next Gen, and have hijinks and adventures. And that was what they were going to do. They were going to do that with Chris Hemsworth's George Kirk in the fourth Star Trek film. So the fourth Abrams Trek film. But they couldn't get the apparently negotiations broke down over money for Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth.
Well, he's kind of gotten used to that MCU money, I guess.
But again, he's never been in anything good that's not part of the MCU. Like pretty much every other film that Chris Hemsworth's done, other than maybe Cabin in the Woods, which is kind of before he was in the MCU, has been trash.
Was he in that Rush?
Yeah, okay. Payback. I haven't seen Rush.
That was okay.
Anyway, it's done. It's done. It's over. Ding dong. The witch is dead. The Wicked Witch. You are done with retrospective. It has been interesting for me to go back and watch them again, so I've appreciated the whole opportunity.
Looking back on it, has your opinion changed on any of your standing critiques of any of the movies? Like, has it?
It has. Nemesis had its moments. Actually, it wasn't as terrible as I remember it was. Tom Hardy really does act his little ass off in that film, and he stands up really well with Patrick Stewart. So Nemesis, I think, deserves to be revisited. And Star Trek Beyond, I remember thinking, no. And I saw it for whatever reason. I don't really remember exactly. I remember, like I said, I did talk about the motorcycle part, and that was dumb.
Yeah.
And the villain is insipid. But it's actually a fun movie, and they kind of got a lot of that right. But yes, so I was a bit harsh on Beyond.
Okay, interesting.
Now talking about things that I love. Something we love we talk about Kevin Smith.
Yes, the Godfather of the show.
Those who don't know, this show started after a conversation we had after seeing a screening of Tusk, at which Kevin Smith did a incredibly stoned Q&A over Skype in the cinema. Like he was
absolutely baked.
And we had that conversation because he always gets asked the question, how do I get started?
Yes.
And Kevin's answer is usually something like, just start. So that's what we did. And we're still in the process of starting. And Clerks, I love Clerks. Like one of my favorite movies. And, I think it's a really wonderful little film. It kind of kicked off Kevin Smith's career. And I always try and explain it. Kevin's one of us, like he's a nerd, he's a geek, he's a guy from the working class world who somehow ended up landing in Hollywood through, raw grit, determination, and a bit of talent. And I think in the 90s, he was the it kid, right? I mean, the Clerks, Mallrats, whether I remember it fondly or not, other people did. I think Chasing Amy at the time was very hip and very trendy. And it's interesting now how unhip and un-PC that film is in hindsight. You could not make that film anymore. To the point where they had Kevin Smith come in and write drafts of the new Superman movie. You can find the whole conversation about that in Death of Superman Lives, What Happens, a great documentary, or one of the YouTube videos of Kevin talking about it. Kevin fucking Smith, a guy who was like a fat guy from Jersey, almost got to write a new Superman movie through the Looking Glass. Yeah. So I wasn't a massive fan of Clerks 2, but I thought it had its moments. When I heard Clerks 3 was coming out, I'm like, that's a terrible idea. It's a fucking terrible idea. Aside from the fact that I think it didn't need a third film, Kevin hasn't been in top form in the last couple of decades. Like, I think the last film of his that I thought was really actually good of any quality was probably Red State. And I think we're going back well over 10 years for that.
2011.
And even then, that's kind of iffy in parts. I had no time for Tusk, no time for the Jay & Silent Bob reboot, and fucking no time for that movie he made with his daughter, Yoga Hoses. It was awful.
Zach and Miri making porno.
So I'm being right. That was okay. But when we go back and watch that again recently, I'm not. But you know, he hasn't done a lot of quality. I was really heartened when a lot of the early reviews came in and said this was really fucking good.
Yeah.
That Chris, I think the guy's name is from JoeBlow.com.
Chris Brumby.
You know, base their entire show off our material usually. He is sounded like his review kind of like he sounded a lot like me. He discovered that film in his late teens and just fell in love with it and was a big Kevin Smith fan from there on forwards. And he said it made him, he actually walked out a bit teary out of a cinema. He really connected with it. It gave me great hope that maybe somehow revisiting his characters had really re-inspired Kevin to start making films of quality again and really sort of, jump-started his muse, which seems to have been on permanent vacation for a long time now. I don't know what film they saw, but it sure as hell wasn't the one that I saw, because Clerks 3 is complete and utter garbage. I'm sorry. I really am sorry, because I remember saying to Michelle while we were watching it the other night, fuck, I really, really, really wanted to like this film. I really wanted to like it. I really have so much time for Kevin. I love that he's still with us after his heart attack. I mean, he's a funny guy. He seems like the kind of guy you'd really enjoy hanging out with. And I really wanted to believe that this was going to be his return to form. But my God, it's not. It's fucking terrible. It is terrible, terrible, terrible. Like, it has a Metascore of 50, and that is fucking generous. I gave this maybe, I'm being generous. I think on IMDb, I might have rated this a 4 out of 10, and I think that's generous. Maybe I should have got, it's bad. Now, that's not to say there aren't a couple of chuckles in this film, but fair few and far between. Anyway, Dante, Elias, and Jay and Silent Bob are enlisted by Randall after a heart attack to make a movie about the convenience store that started it all. So it's set in the present day. Dante, played by I forget the character's name now for all these years. The same guy who always plays Dante, and Randall now own the Quick Stop. Yeah. So at the end of, I hadn't seen Clerks 2 in about 15 years, so I had to try and really remember what happened. But they were in the previous film. Brian O'Halloran, plays Dante. They were working at Movies, which is a fast food store in the second one. I think from memory, maybe it burns down or something at the end of the second one. I can't remember. But they are now back at the Quick Stop, and they now own the business 50-50. Next door, where the video store was, is now a marijuana dispensary, which is owned by none other than Jay and Silent Bob. We are introduced to the character of Elias, played by Trevor Thireman, as someone who works for Dante and Randall in the store, and is kind of the butt of a lot of their jokes. He's one of the few bright spots in this film, in the sense that initially he's kind of annoying, but he has some good stuff in the end, some chuckles, some amusing moments. But he just turns up, and it's like, I like in the synopsis, like, Jay, Dante and Elias work with Dante. I'm like, we've not really ever given much of an intro to him, other than he just sort of turns up. And it just keeps happening in this film. There's not a lot of context of a lot of the cool things, the ideas that are in this film. As it's noted, Randall, early in the film, has a massive heart attack and is rushed to hospital, where he survives purely on the skill of his surgeon. And it turns out he has had a Widowmaker heart attack, which is the same one that Kevin has.
Yeah.
And trying to find the actual name of the actress who plays the surgeon. I think it's Amy Sedaris.
Yes.
Who plays in The Mandalorian, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
She's the mechanic person in The Mandalorian. Anyway, so after coming out of hospital, he has kind of a come to Jesus moment and realizes that, maybe he's joking with Dante in the hospital, but Dante says something like, you would have made a great movie. He says, why don't I make a movie? And then starts the process of Randall trying to make his movie. The movie that Randall is trying to make is Clerks. The original Clerks movie. So he started to make a movie about all the stories and funny things that had happened to them while they were working in the Quick Stop and the video store. And you know what? I kind of thought, when I saw that story idea, I thought, that's kind of a cool idea, actually. It's very meta. And they can nod at that. They kind of go, actually, that's kind of meta. And I'm like, it is, but it kind of works in a way. I was kind of like, this is obviously something Kevin's passionate about. He's had the heart attack himself, and, he's done really well. He's lost all that weight subsequently to this. He's gone vegan to do it. I mean, sacrifices had to be made. And, you hear him talk about it, and he's actually been quite an advocate for it and, recognizing the signs of a heart attack. And I thought, this is cool. And, now his characters, his great creation, are going to make Clerks in the Clerks universe. That's kind of a cool idea. No, I'm afraid it's not. I mean, the moment in the hospital where Randall's had the heart attack, I mean, Michelle and I kind of looked at each other and talked about how it felt like an after-school special on public television here in Australia. We would say the ABC, maybe the BBC back home for you, or PBS in the US. We're like, kids, we've had a lot of laughs here today, but heart attacks are no laughing matter. If you're having a heart attack, call 911 today. Kind of like, and it just sort of like, it's conversation between Dante and the surgeon going, wow, heart attacks are serious, aren't they, doc? Yeah, that's right, Dante. Heart attacks kill 1 of 3 Australians. Okay, I'll be sure. You should get your heart checked too if you have a life like him. Oh, yes, doctor, I'll definitely get my heart checked now. There were moments of it like that felt not like a feature film, but like a public service announcement. And that's not good. I mean, always Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson, they're not pros, I don't think. I mean, they're not professional actors. They were keen amateurs, I think. That's all that Kevin could afford to hire at the time. He got very, very lucky. Got cast in a film that went big, and they're still starring those characters all these years later.
Yeah.
But what follows the public service announcement in the hospital, and Dante comes back and starts making his movie, is a series of callbacks, fan service, and member berries.
Okay.
And, I'm not opposed to them. Some of them are kind of, a couple of them here and there are fine. Like, outside of the Quick Stop, they've got those cardboard advertising hoardings around some of the poles at the front. And it has like, Chewlie's gum and Nails, which were a brand of cigarettes and the brand of gum that he made up for it. And there's nice little nods here and there and stuff like to reminders of the 90s. And you go, yeah, I can't a couple, but they just get coming. And they just get coming. And they become less nuanced and less sensible. They come sort of because they don't make any sense at all. Like they just be a reference that's inserted for the sake of it being a reference. And there's one or two that are kind of, they make a joke out of it. It's kind of funny. Like there's one in the trailer you can see where Dante says, well, you could do that story about you. You could tell that story about you and the Death Star and the toilet contractors. And Randall's like, no, we just get sued by Disney. And I'm like, you go, yeah, it's kind of funny. And it's why you put it in the trailer. But most of the references are just thrown in for the sake of being thrown in. They don't seem to actually fit the story. And after a while, the story seems to take the backseat to the story is just there to provide a vehicle for references, callbacks, and nostalgia.
Okay.
And that seems to be 80% of the film. And the other 10% of story, and the other 10% is cameos, each more shocking than the last, including Sarah Michelle Gellar, Fred Armisen, Anthony Michael Hall, Ben Affleck, Justin Long, Ethan Suplee, Melissa Benoit, Rosario Dawson, Kate Masucci, Freddie Prinze Jr., Danny Trejo, Harley Quinn Smith, his daughter. And that's just the famous ones.
Yeah.
There's also all the people from the first movie, like Marilyn Gigliotti, who played Veronica, who was Dante's girlfriend in the original. Turns up for a few scenes, including a sex scene in this one. A number of other people who just characters from the first one. The guy who was examining the eggs in the first one comes back again to take a selfie with an egg this time.
Okay.
So it's like the story is really unimportant here. It's hey, we had this cool idea. What do we do with this idea now of Randall making this movie? I don't know. Let's just put in a bunch of references and nostalgia, and that's all it is. And I'm not opposed to nostalgia. I like nostalgia. Yeah. People like me like nostalgia, and I'm a person like me. And I just like it when it's done smartly, or it's done with some, what's the word, discretion, or you don't put it all in at once. You know what I mean? There's too much of a good thing can be bad. And there's too much of it. There is way too much here.
Okay.
Way too much. So it's got nothing to say. I don't think. I think it's got some ideas about what it might want to say. There's some interesting ideas hinted at. So for those who remember in Clerks 2, Rosario Dawson played Becky, who was Dante's fiance, I think, from memory.
No, she was the boss at
but they were together though.
They had a thing, and then by the end, because he was going to get married to someone else, and then she finds out that she's pregnant, I think, and then he ends up staying with her rather than getting married to someone he doesn't really love.
Yes, but there were a couple of sorts. I don't know if they were engaged or whatever, but yeah. So it's how long it's been. I should have gone back and watched Clerks 2 first. I'm sorry, people. I only have so much time in a week. Spoiler alert. So this one probably should be the spoiler.
Hang on. There you go.
Down there, the spoilers are on. If you want to know nothing about this film, including George, you can just go la 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 la. But at the start of this film, we find out that Becky is dead. Larry Dawson. And it made me stop and go, did she die at the end of the last film and I just forget? I don't remember her dying at the end of the last one. She could have died at the end of the last one. I don't remember. But they don't really actually take the time to explain how and why and what happened. There is a scene in the hospital where Dante has a flashback to her on a gurney being wheeled in. And I think it's insinuated that she passed away of cancer of some description.
Okay.
But Rosario Dawson does make a comeback as a Force ghost. I'm being facetious. It's not actually noted that she is a Force ghost. But she does. He'll go and visit her grave, and then there'll be a scene where the two of them have a full-on conversation. And she'll continue to return to him, in that way throughout the film.
Okay.
And you're going to go, it's an interesting idea again. But it's sort of like Kevin suddenly slams on the brakes, spins the wheel, pulls the handbrake, and all of a sudden a huge left turn right out of nowhere into a very emotional moment between Dante and Becky. And there's a number of these scenes where Dante gets very emotional. And props to Brian O'Halloran. He does some of his best acting he's ever done in those scenes. But they're completely out of character for the rest of the story. And this is why my problem with a lot of Kevin's work of late. I don't want to diss the guy. He's put a lot more films out than I ever have. But the tone of the films don't match.
Yeah.
It's like there's no easing into this kind of emotion. It doesn't seem to fit into the rest of the story. Just the fart jokes and dick jokes, and here's a big emotional scene for you to enjoy. Yeah. It just seems like it really really pulls you out of a picture because you're like, okay, I'm sorry, what is this movie? Some of these ideas around loss and moving on and being stuck in Arrested Development due to the loss and trauma in the middle years of your life. I think these are interesting ideas that Kevin's touching on here. you and I are big advocates for men's mental health, and in particular, he's doing a walk for men's mental health. He'll tell you later about how you can support him in doing that. See, I was talking about this with Michelle, but people almost play it for laughs. The idea of a man in his 40s who is stuck in Arrested Development, or failure to launch, if you remember that film from all those years ago, or stuck in a rut, even if you're not stuck 10 years ago because the person you loved left you or died 10 years ago, as in this case. These are ideas that people kind of laugh off, and we don't really, I feel like, give a proper respect or attention. You just go, whoa, he's just a loser who lives in his mum's basement. And I think that's not a smart way to deal with those issues. I think these people's issues, while they may manifest themselves in ugly ways, a la the Proud Boys or Trump supporters or whatever, they get a little political for a second. I think that kind of loss and trauma can lead to some ugly places. But we don't spend any time sympathetically examining what that's like or how to move through that in our stories. And I thought this would have been a wonderful opportunity for us to, and maybe Kevin Smith's not the director to do it, but it would have been an interesting idea. And I think he's the kind of director who could, because he's the kind of director these people will watch his films, because they're full of fart and dick jokes and weed jokes, smoking a giant joint, But if you could also manage to subvert that with also some messages about, hey, trauma happens to everybody. And you know what? It's actually kind of normal in your 40s to actually be kind of hit over the head with that, and to, be stuck a little bit, and to really not know what to do with that trauma. And then maybe explore some ideas about how that can be dealt with. I mean, I'm not talking in a preachy after school PSA way. I'm talking about, through a nuanced storytelling of, a character, just going an arc, he loses his wife, his friend has a heart attack, he's experienced a lot of loss. What does he do now? How does he move through that? And I think the story here, what he's trying to tell is about the power of friendship and the value of friendship and the value of, male friendships. And again, that's something else as we play for laughs, but are important, especially in this day. And I'm sorry, I'm ranting about this, but these are all things he could have done. These are all ideas that are kind of sprinkled in there. I feel like maybe they're there by accident. This film is so bad because he takes no effort to actually explore the interesting ideas that he bumps into here, in place of just nostalgia and fan service.
It almost kind of sounds like this is, like we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, of those movies that brought in stereotypes that are now actually very socially aware, or in the zeitgeist of society much more than ever. And it's like, okay, I think we might have even been talking about Chasing Amy, and how sort of like, actual LGBTQI representation on screen, but then looking back at it is incredibly problematic and very bad. But it was all that we had at the time, and it was maybe a necessary step. It kind of feels like that seems to be Kevin Smith's thing of sort of like, I have a message to say, I'm not good enough to pull it off properly, so this is the best I've got. Someone else take it from here.
To a degree, I can see your point. I don't think when he was telling Chasing Amy, he really wanted to tell an LGBTQ story. Sure. I just think it was like, it's funny. Wouldn't it be funny if you fell in love with a lesbian? I mean, and Seinfeld did something similar. The character George was dating someone who turned out to be a lesbian. And like, it should have been offensive to us in 1999. The idea that Ben Affleck could turn a lesbian away from same-sex attraction, he would try. It could have been offensive, but it was also charmingly written and funny. And I still think I haven't seen it in a long time. Maybe the jokes still hold up. I don't know. Maybe. Despite being offensive, I think it can be both.
Yes.
Remember we saw the what was the Peter Sellers film we saw? Murder by Death.
Murder by Death.
Like, there's some funny jokes in there still, but you're not allowed to laugh at that. I look, I want to ramble on about this too much. I've been going on about it too long. I'm sorry. It's bad. It's really, really bad. If you like me and you're a long-time Kevin Smith fan, look, you might get, there's plenty of fan service nostalgia in there that you're going to get out of it. I didn't enjoy that. I did, you know, just getting nostalgia by itself with nothing else around it is, you know, like eating at breakfast, having a bowl of marshmallows for breakfast. You know, like the first one or two taste okay, they can get cloying after a while. You know, it's really hard in the end. I was glad it was over. It was a long hour, 40 minutes. I'm sorry, guys. I don't think Kevin's got it anymore. Love you always. Love him always. If he ever sees this, we're fucking dead. He said his Twitter army on us, but I'll still see his stuff. I'll see even more Rats thing when it comes out. But
yeah,
my expectations forevermore, I think, are going to be set to 0 for Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, is the stuff that he's got coming up. He's got Kilroy Was Here, which is due to come out this year. Twilight of the Mallrights, which is in pre-production. Sam and Twitch, which is some TV show. Moose Jaws, the much lauded third of the Great White North movies that he's been making, and Hell in a Handbag, which is another announced one. So we'll see what happens there. But none of those are exactly kind of going, okay, yeah, that sounds like he's really trying something new, or there's no indication there whatsoever one way or
I think he talked a while ago about becoming comfortable with the idea of what he was, what he could do. And he was like, I accept the kind of filmmaker I am. I'm going to stop trying to make, what was that film he made with Bruce Willis? Cop, you know, and like those kind of films, those big studio films. I'm not going to do them anymore. I'm going to make the films I want to make, the films I think I'm good at. And it almost feels like he's accepted, well, I'm terrible, so I'm going to keep making terrible films, but I'm not going to try and make good films anymore.
Yeah, kind of. Which is a shame, because he does, when he's tuned in, he's shown that he has talent.
He did, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that are bad, you saw The Bad Guys.
Yes, I did. So
it may not be actually bad. It's just called The Bad Guys. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just called The Bad Guys. And came out this year. It's based on a series of books written by Aaron Blabby. Blabby?
Here's what I found.
Shut up. Siri keeps on talking to me. It is a DreamWorks production, and it has got one of our favorite actors voicing in it, and he does a great job. It is Samuel Rockwell. It's got quite a few voices in there, actually, that we do appreciate, including Richard Ayoade as Professor Marmalade, and the eternal voice of Alex Borstein. It's got Zazie Beetz, it's got Anthony Ramos, Craig Robinson, Awkwafina, and Mark Marone take up the primary big characters of the film. This is, to avoid prison, a gang of notorious animal criminals pretend to seek being rehabilitated, only for their leader to secretly find that he genuinely wants to change his ways. Now, that sounds like a very, very kid-friendly movie, and this is designed for kids. It's based on kids' series books. But what it does is have a whole lot of charm, and it kind of knows what it's trying to do. Sam Rockwell plays Wolf. Mark Marone plays Snake. Awkwafina is Tarantula. Craig Robertson is Shark. And Anthony Ramos is Piranha. Richard Ayoade plays Professor Marmalade, who is a guinea pig that is about to receive an achievement for his philanthropic work. And the first thing that hit me about this movie, the animation style, unique, interesting, and beautiful. It's got a little bit of Into the Spider-Verse style kind of dropped frame things. So like action sequences just have this even more of a comic book kind of feel to them, with that Here's a panel, here's a panel, here's a panel. And the use of color is really interesting. The sound effects and everything about it just works very, very nicely. There's more than a nod from Sam Rockwell with his portrayal of Wolf of George Clooney, especially from Ocean's 11. And yes, there's definitely more than a touch of Ocean's 11 in some of the heist things that go on. But it's just really enjoyable. And I was not expecting that at all, especially considering it's a DreamWorks movie and they are patchy at best. Like, I am a huge fan of their How to Train Your Dragons movies, especially How to Train Your Dragons 2. Makes me cry like a baby every time. There's the stuff with Dad, Stoic, and Kung Fu Panda 1 is still hands down the best origin story for Darth Vader that ever was not a Star Wars movie. And Kung Fu Panda 2, beautiful, great story, really, really well done. But then for all of those things, they've got pretty much all the sequels to Shrek. They have got so many heinous things to name, like Shark Tale. And this, just from the pictures, just from the stills and the poster, kind of looks like, oh, they're going more cutesy and style over substance. But that's not the case. The animation, like I said, is standout, different and interesting and compelling. And the story arc that these guys go on is actually culturally interesting. It's about the being tarred with the brush and the stereotype expectation, and how you can either just accept it and be who everyone thinks you're going to be, and you're not going to be surprised or disappointed with how people react, or you can choose the often harder route of proving to be yourself and working out a way of ingratiating that into society, where people see you for you, the good and the bad, for lack of a better descriptor. The delight of it is, the genuine delight of it is Richard Ayoade. He plays a guinea pig.
You didn't need to say that. I mean, Richard Ayoade is just always good value.
Yes, and what they do with Professor Marmalade, and it's obvious what's going to happen, but it's played so beautifully that you don't care that you can see it coming. This is a kids' movie. They're not trying to outsmart the smartest people in the room or anything like that. They're just telling a story, but it's still compelling and entertaining. And the way that his voice is, he's not doing anything different with his voice, except maybe a little bit higher. It's just Richard Ayoade, and he just plays it the same way that he has always played every character that he's ever been, and it's just brilliant. It just works. And this was one that I just thought, fuck it, I'll see it. Why not? It's free on Prime Video, and it's like, okay, I'm happily surprised by this. All of the characters work really well together. I don't know what kind of production that they had on it, if they were purposely kind of recording together, because you do definitely there's a different quality, especially in American and voice acting, where, for example, in Wes Anderson's Fantastic Mr. Fox, they had raw audio where everyone was just playing in the same room, and you could kind of feel it in the snappiness of the line delivery. Kind of feels like they did something very similar, or it's fantastic editing and just performers who know how to deliver their characters, because the relationship between the bad guys and how their repartee just is nice and snappy and quick. It speaks to being smartly written and being well performed, and it feels genuine. So very happy.
The screenplay here is written by Ethan Cohen. who's been responsible for some really good stuff and some really bad stuff. I mean, he's written Holmes and Watson, Men in Black 3. Haven't seen Madagascar, but he also wrote Idiocracy, which is a fucking great movie. He wrote the screenplay Tropic Thunder, which is really fucking good. Yeah. He wrote a whole bunch of King of a Hill.
Yeah.
So, there's a guy who can swing from, terrible to quite good. But the guy obviously can write when given good source material. In this case, we haven't read the books, but maybe the books are great.
Yeah, but I don't know anything about the books, but I'm curious. I think that the uniqueness of the animation style and these characters being likable anti-heroes could very comfortably lend themselves to be a franchise starter for DreamWorks for their new for their animation as they go forwards, because nothing's happening with Kung Fu Panda. There's no more How to Train Your Dragon except for a TV show set years in the future. There's no Shrek. They kind of need a new mantle, and this could potentially be it. So, yeah, very enjoyable.
It sounds, I might have to check that out.
It's just entertaining. It's definitely focused for kids, but it's still smart enough. It's not got it doesn't go as far as like the early Pixar stuff of this is for kids and adults. This is definitely for kids, but it's palatable enough and intelligently enough directed that you can just enjoy it, and you don't have to pay too much attention, but there's good sight gags in it from time to time. The voice actors really do help make this shine. Yeah.
Good voice actors make all the difference.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Well, from the ridiculous to the sublime, it was my weekend. After sitting down and watching Clerks 3 and airing out the living room from that crap for a while, we decided we needed a palate cleanser, and we decided the palate cleanser normally is something ridiculous. Having just watched something ridiculous and lighthearted, we went for something a bit different. And finally, after so many years, I've got around to seeing Parasite. I don't remember if you've seen this. I think you might have seen it and talked about it in the show a while ago. So apologies to long-term listeners if we're doubling up here. But I finally got around to it. This is the Best Picture winner at the Academy Awards in 2020. For one, of course, as George pointed out earlier, Trump got up to arms about. It's the first foreign language film, I think, to actually non-English, shall we say, non-English language film to win Best Picture. Greed and class discrimination threaten newly formed symbiotic relationship between the wealthy Park family and the destitute Kim clan. This film is directed by, I think it's fair to say now, the great Bong Joon-ho. If you have films you might have seen him from. His Hollywood debut, I believe, was Snowpiercer in 2013, which is quite good. He directed the super weird Okja
Netflix,
Netflix, co-written by one of my favorite authors, John Ronson. And he also made a bit of a splash in the early to mid 2000s with The Host, the South Korean horror film. This again is a South Korean film. It is set in South Korea, all South Korean actors, and in Korean. So you're going to be reading subtitles, I think, here. The plot of the film: we meet the Kim family. So I don't know if I'm going to get these names right, but we have four of them: father, mother, son, and daughter. And as the synopsis notes, they are destitute. We meet them in their basement apartment, moving around, holding their phones up in the air, trying to find a free Wi-Fi signal somewhere because their upstairs neighbor put a password on hers, and all of their phones have been cut off. We then see them proceed to be folding pizza boxes to earn enough for hundreds and hundreds of pizza boxes to earn enough money in order to get their phone switched back on. So they're really, really scratching for it, this mob. The son, I think, is it Kiwoo?
Kiwoo, yes.
Kiwoo. Sorry, Mike, it's terrible. Meets with his friend, his friend drops by with a philosopher's stone. I had to Google what they were, or a scholar's stone. And they go out for a drink, and he asks him if he could help asks through conversation. It comes up that he's been tutoring a young girl who's a member of a wealthy family, the Park family, and he's going overseas for a while, and he would ask Ki-woo to fill in for him as this girl's tutor because he trusts Ki-woo not to crack onto her because he's quite keen on dating this girl when he gets back from overseas. Ki-woo says no, eventually agrees to tutor her in English and rolls up to the house of the Park, a very sumptuous house of a Park family, where he ends up going under the name of Kevin. And hereby starts what the synopsis called the symbiotic relationship. It turns out that they need a teacher of sorts, or an art teacher, for the youngest child, the Park family's youngest boy, who they think is some sort of genius artist. So Ki-woo enlists his sister to come in and help. Yeon Kyo, I'm sorry, and she plays the part. They don't actually tell anybody that they're brother and sister, and they don't tell anybody that she has no qualifications as an art teacher or art therapist. There's actually a great scene where she says, "Oh, I don't know anything about this. I just Googled art therapy before I came in and made the rest of it up." But she's quite successful in taming the youngest Park boy. And the Mrs. Park, the woman of the house, is, this is actually pretty good. And then it turns out that they actually engineer a situation where Mr. Park, the man of the house's driver, is fired by deliberately leaving her underwear in the car where it can be found, and it makes it look like he's been, bringing girls back for a bit of, horizontal folk dancing in the back of a car there. And he's so they end up, okay, well, now we need a driver, and guess what? Dad used to be a driver, so they get him hired as a driver, and then they engineer a situation to get the maid of the house fired because that way they can get mum a job. So all four of them end up working in this house, despite the fact the Parks don't know that all four of them are related, and that in at least two of these situations, they've specifically engineered the situation where the original person in the job was fired so that the family member could be hired. So we're all pretty sketchy family to get ahead, because the Park family being so wealthy, it's basically the parasitic relationship they're sucking off to survive. Things start to go south, however, when one particular night the former maid comes back to the house because she's forgotten something. Bafflingly, they let her in, and the thing that she's forgotten turns out to be in the basement of a property, and that really sets the cat amongst the pigeons, and chaos ensues once everybody realizes what it is she's forgotten, and she realizes what they're up to. I'm being a little bit vague here because if you are a bit like me and you haven't seen the film yet, I absolutely do not want to spoil what happens here. I think that's a fair setup. It gives you an idea of what's going on here. And the director actually made a plea, I think it's when it came out, please don't spoil this for people. Now, it's a 3-year-old film, so, you've had your chance. But I would like you to experience this. Somehow, I went into this completely clean. So when you talked about it a while ago, you obviously did a good job of it, lack of spoilers as well. Because I had no idea what was coming in the last act of this film. And this film goes absolutely bonkers in the last act, but in the best possible way.
Yes.
Like, you don't see any of this shit coming. Did you see it coming? You got your superpower, did you?
No, I did not see this coming, because it's every single time it cranks it up and cranks it up and cranks it up. And it after the first one and then the second one, it's like, okay, there's not too terrible. That's not too scary. Oh, they're getting a bit sinister with installing themselves in this family's life, and then the maid coming back, and then it just keeps on going. It's like, okay, that what? There's more, and then the sort of like garden party.
Oh wow! This film is undoubtedly a masterpiece. It was scandalous that it was overlooked for the acting awards.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, the actor who played Dad, who I'm just going to quickly look at his name now. Song Kang-ho. Fucking amazing. Like, yes. The first thing we see him doing in this film is putting together pizza boxes, and he fucks it up. It's insinuated that they get their pay docked because he fucked up putting together pizza boxes. And where his journey ends. I'm very sorry. It must be very frustrating for trying to tiptoe around it, but the subtext of the story, I don't think it's mysterious that this is a class criticism.
No.
That this is making a point about the differences between the haves and the have-nots in South Korea, and I think it's fair to say that's probably easily transferable to just about anywhere in the West. United States or here in Australia. Bong Joon-ho, when he wrote this, said he created the character of Ki-woo as getting a job as a tutor because that's the only way he could think of that a family of the Park stature and the Kim stature would actually come in contact with each other. It's not always particularly subtle about its symbolism. There's a scene during a rainstorm where the Kims are running through the city and they end up coming down the stairs, going down a lot, down staircases, down streets, down hills. And it's an obvious metaphor for their descent from the heights of the Park house into the shithole of a home, almost literal shithole of a home that they share in their basement. And but it's not subtle about making its points there. What is interesting about this is who is the parasite exactly?
Yeah.
I mean, the obvious answer is the Kims are the parasites. They are the ones who have latched onto the Park family, and they've engineered this situation where all four of them are, making a living off this Park family, and their well-being now relies on the well-being of the Park family. But it's not that clear. All four of the members of the Park family have pretty empty lives at the start of this film. All four of them seek out and need a companion in their life. So the rich quite commonly could be viewed as the truly parasitic ones, members of society, who, set up high and, benefit from the labors of the thousands and millions of people who couldn't possibly dream of a life, lived in their little flop tree. I love the fact that 2/3 of the way through the film, before the final act we were just sort of hinting at there, the Kim family are basically con artists.
Yeah.
They're basically con artists who have conned this family, who've done nothing to anybody, into employing all for them. They've organized for two good people, hardworking people, honest people, to be fired from their jobs so that they can have them instead. And yet, you're still rooting for the Kim family.
Yeah.
At least I was. And I found myself going, hang on a second, but they're bad. These are bad people. Why do I want them to survive? Why do I want them to be okay? Why do I want them to see them, this, as you sort of said, when he ratchets the tension up, and why do I want to see them get out of this situation okay? Why am I rooting against other things in this picture who are, perhaps not as bad as the Kim family are? That's a work of genius for me.
Yes, 100%, 100%. Can't argue with any single thing you've said there. And then you haven't even talked about the production of it and the literal, there was a masterclass breakdown of Parasite the movie, talking about how it was framed and characters being on very separate boxes, like you in your box, me in another box, symbolizing the different statures and how they slowly get, the Kim family slowly get closer to the edge of those boxes before they break through and invade and things like that. And it's that visual storytelling that goes into this. It's not just thinking about the literal narrative story that we're going through, but that visual design, the color usage that is just stunning. Everything about it is meticulously designed to tell you a story, and the story that you're telling versus the story that you're seeing are quite different. And that's part of the reason why I think that you do empathize and want the Kims to win, because they're the ones who are trying to break out of these shitty boxes. And we are being shown that and told that without words, just purely by visuals, just purely by where they set the camera up. It's like, oh, there's a window frame there. That's just going to separate them for now. And so you are being told two stories at the same time to reinforce your opinion one way or the other. Stunning.
The guy is a master storyteller. He's a master filmmaker. I can't wait to see what he does next. I mean, I remember his Oscar speech. He talked about in film school, he had to study the films of Martin Scorsese, who he'd just beaten for an Oscar. I think it was The Irishman. Might have been the film he was nominated for.
I think it was The Irishman.
And I think he also specifically called out Quentin Tarantino, what a fan of his he was, who was, I believe, up for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that year. And I think he doesn't have a track record yet of either of those two filmmakers, in fairness. But in my humble opinion, as a Captain Nobody who's never made a film of his own, we are witnessing a filmmaker of that quality. I think it is fair to call him a master filmmaker now. Master storyteller. His next project is a film called Mickey 7, which is based on a book about it sounds class related again. Then he has an animated project, apparently, a Bong Joon-ho animated project. I cannot wait to see what he does with animation.
Yeah.
Like, dare we say it? Could there be Hayao Miyazaki, Bong Joon-ho crossover? I mean, obviously, there's absolutely no indication that's what it is. I'm just fanboying here a little bit. Like the master animator meets, the master storyteller filmmaker. But I don't know a lot of animation out of South Korea. Have you come across any in your travels?
There's a lot of animation studios in South Korea. For example, a lot of the later series of Futurama and Disenchantment on Netflix, and I think maybe even The Legend of Aang came out of Studio Mia, which I believe is a South Korean animation house. They have got skill. They know how to deliver quality animation in very different styles as well. So I think that whatever we see is going to be particularly interested. What I'm interested in is the potential beyond just the standard animation. For example, this Christmas, we have got Guillermo del Toro's stop motion animation of Pinocchio, which looks sublime from the trailer and is Guillermo del Toro, so I'm going to watch it and I'm probably going to really enjoy it. And let's just put it this way, there's only up from what Disney did with the Tom Hanks Pinocchio that they released earlier this year. So the idea of him doing any kind of animation is exciting to me, because it's about, he already uses every pixel of the frame to tell story, and that is the watermark symbol of mastery for animated studios. They use every single frame because they're literally building every single fucking frame. He's already doing that on a story level. This could be really fucking good.
So if you're like me and you've been putting it off for whatever reason, I literally remember at the start of a pandemic putting it on my to watch list on Prime or something like that and never getting around to it. It might seem like hard work because it's subtitles, but please give it a try. It's well worth it. Look.
The thing that I'm kind of interested in, it's kind of obscenely, is if they would try and what the end result would be if they tried to do a Western translation of it.
Well, HBO apparently have commissioned a series based on Parasite.
Interesting.
Which I believe the idea is it will be based in the Parasite world, but not the characters and the events in the film.
Interesting. It would be really interesting if they had the balls to go, you know what? We're just going to keep this set in South Korea. Can you imagine that? An HBO-produced South Korean filmed movie being mass released.
Bong Joon-ho's Parasite HBO series is an original story set in film's universe, not a remake. It's an original story that lives in the same world. Adam McKay, I believe, is the man responsible for the series. At least this was as of the time of the story about a year and a half ago. So the guy, he and Adam McKay don't look up, I believe.
Yeah.
Amongst other things. The Big Short, Vice, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Interesting choice. Well, we'll see what happens with that, but I'm so glad that you finally got around to seeing Parasite because pure gold. Now, the last thing that I'm going to spend just 2 minutes talking about, because it is not worth any more time than that, and it's Halloween period, it's Hocus Pocus 2 on Disney+. This is one of the better releases straight to Disney+ that Disney have produced, but at the same time, it's entirely unnecessary and entirely, Hocus Pocus was all right. And they've basically just done that again. It's like, okay, cool. I think the first one was definitely better. The special effects in this are fine. Bette Midler as Winifred, she's cool. And Sarah Jessica Parker coming back. It's nice to see her actually putting some energy into a role. And clearly she loves this role because it's the most acting I've seen her do in probably 2 decades. Beyond that, it is completely forgettable.
Did you like the original?
Yeah, it was all right. For what it was. It was fine, but it didn't need a sequel, and it still doesn't.
Well, everything needs a sequel if someone's prepared to pay to watch it.
No. Not everything needs a prequel. Not everything needs a sequel. Some things are deliciously single.
How else would we have found out how Han Solo got the fluffy dice? I know, for one. I mean, I was awake at night worrying about that one.
Don't start with me, man. Don't start with me.
Anyway, I think that's a show, right? That's a show.
Yeah, that's the show. But, like we said, a big show, but we managed to pack in a whole chunk of movies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 if you talk about the 3 separate Star Trek movies. 10 movie topics and TV topics in one show in 2 hours and 13 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to wrap it up there so that we don't take up any more of your time this week. But thank you so much for joining us for episode 161 of The Armchair Producers, where we talked about Mystery Men, our chain movie of the week. Travis has chosen, hopefully, the still delightful Mallrats for next week. Available pretty much everywhere on streaming services around the globe. I talked about the finales for She-Hulk and Rings of Power with very varied opinions on those ones. We talked about the Trek-Respective. It's the Kelvin universe, right?
Yeah, the Kelvinverse.
The Kelvinverse. Which ended with 9 out of 10 result for Star Trek Beyond. We talked about Clerks 3, The Bad Guys, Parasite, and just a quick little whatever for Hocus Pocus 2. Thank you so much for joining us. As Travis did say last time, yes, you can buy my book.
Buy his book.
Prime Video. I am officially a paid author now, by the way. Well, I have received residuals for the book for the first time ever.
You too can contribute to that.
Yes, please. I need money. But yes, the big thing for this month is my Black Dog Walk for mental health awareness. please go to Facebook and follow the links to sponsor as much as you can, from $1 to $1,000. Over the weekend, I went camping and ended up walking about 16.5 kilometers in one day just to get my numbers going there. That reminds me, I need to update those on the website. But yeah, this is a really good cause. And as we talked about earlier in the show, it is something that both myself and Travis really do try and help promote as much as we can, because it is very important. But thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you same time, same place next week.